Hello all you happy Resolume people out there. I thought I'd give another tutorial here on Pixel Disco. This creates this pixelated kind of graphic using these squares and kind of disco because that's what it reminds me of. It has this kind of quality of, the purple and the hue and the yellow glow that's going around it. I wanted to kind of give it that glittery glitter ball kind of feel. So that's where this kind of came to be. I was looking again some other inspirations and saw this and I thought, yeah, that'd be really cool if it was animated. I was like, yeah, I think I could do that. So I created this. This is a Pixel Disco. Just wanted to kind of give you a quick rundown to kind of give you an example of some of the things that you could do with it. It has the ability to change the size of the squares if you so choose to, but the original idea was to stay with this like sized squares, large or small, and I'll show those in just one second. But to kind of give you an example of some of the things that you could do with it. It's not just for that kind of look or vibe, but it's to kind of give you a jumping off point. This is a source, so it's to kind of be added as a supplement, as an animated supplement to go with all of your other kinds of projects. So to kind of give you a quick rundown through the tutorial, I have 3 different pattern types. There's the radial noise that radiates from the middle and works its way out, kind of a polarized radial. I also have the flat noise, which is just going straight up and down and just kind of moves gently, and it doesn't move too fast unless you want it to. There's a way to speed it up here. You can choose this option and it should make it so that it's faster. You'll notice that it's moving faster now. So to the left is to move it fast, and to move it to the left or to the right is very slow. So to kind of give you an idea. Same thing with the radial, it'll move faster if you change the speed here. You get faster, slower, so on and so forth. There's also the option for gradient, which just basically just moves the gradient across the screen in just a linear fashion. Some things, let's go back quickly to the radial noise and the flat noise. They're working off the same kinds of premise. The gradients are a little bit different, and we'll explain those as we get to that point. So pattern size is exactly that. It's the size of the pattern that's being created in the background. As the pattern gets, smaller, it's easier to kind of see the pattern or see its repeat over time. So if this is sped up, that would help with some of that. But overall, I don't think it's too bad. I think that the grid size and the pattern size are big enough that it's not so much of an issue. However, I think that works. It's just finding those dialing in those numbers to your liking. So a couple things. The grid size actually changes the size of the grid. So if you want really, really big squares, you've got them. But if you want really tiny squares, you can also do that as well. Here's where you can kind of see the pattern a little bit more, as I was talking about. But if you, like for instance, if your grid size and your pattern size is high up, you're going to notice it. But there is an option here to kind of, shrink that down. So it's not as obvious here because the pattern size is big, or small, but the grid size is big. And vice versa, if I had the grid size and pattern size, it's a little bit more noticeable here because the grid size it has to do with how its ratio is set up. You get the idea. So just kind of fiddle with these and see which, to your liking, to which one you like. You can also shift the pattern left and right. In the radial, it doesn't work that way. It's actually just kind of turning the pattern. But also, if you notice that the pattern is different from this one to this one, but it does change it on the radial as well, mainly because how this is created, just a heads up. Square size is the actual size of the actual squares themselves. So if you want to have this kind of like mirror ball effect or these rounded squares as you get closer and closer to each other, or as they shrink, there's less and less space. There's more gap in between each square, which can be visually interesting. There are ways that you can play with this as well. It's really kind of up to you. So let's go back to here. So we also have the size oscillation. size oscillation is just that. You'll notice the squares actually turn like flat, and that's the reason why I gave this as an option. I like the rounded edges, and that's kind of how the pixel disco kind of came about. Was I was looking at an image and I thought that's interesting, but I think it really needs some motion to it, and so I like the look of this. However, I also think this is visually interesting as well because the squares can, oscillate in size, and I think that's interesting as well. So some of the things that are actually kind of nice about that is you can still use the pixel size, which will, it's like the maximum that the squares can be. However, they taper off as the gradient value gets closer to black. So you have the speed, which we've gone through. We also have the gradients. So let's talk about that real quick. The gradients work on a little bit different kind of process. Gradients are adjusted by this speed here, which because of how it's set up, I had to create a different kind of system. So to kind of give you an idea, this speed is joined in with the gradient speed. So this will let you oscillate to the left or oscillate to the right. It's up to you. And then this controls the speed of that. As you get closer to 0, because of how these values are created, the gradient that is created, it gets this kind of step kind of look, which is very interesting visually. However, if you don't want that, just kind of give it a little bit more speed and it should be not as noticeable, just a heads up. So if you give it an oscillation speed like this, but then you speed this down, it's a little bit better. So to just kind of keep that in mind. Okay. So you also have rotation. Rotation is to change where the angle of the gradient is coming. It's coming back around. Is to change the angle of where your gradient is, and also you have the ability to change the gap. So this is the brightness of the yellow spaces, and then you also have the contrast, which basically changes the amount of space of the brightness. So I could like get a kind of a different visual effect based upon the brightness and contrast of that gradient that's creating that in the background. Just a heads up. So I thought that was visually interesting, and I thought, yeah, we'll leave that in there. I think that'll add a little extra zhuzh. Okay, so color overlay. Color overlay is the actual colors that are overlaid on top. It's like the glow of the pixel disco. So if you did just turned off the overlay all entirely, you'll just get the gradient variance. You'll get the highlights, you'll get the midtones, and then the shadows. But then if you like this look, good. If you don't, you want it to have a little extra, je ne sais quoi, you can add in a little overlay blur. This overlay blur just kind of blurs that color and just kind of mixes it in with everything else. And then the intensity, you can turn down the intensity or add in the intensity. And so this is so that you can mix the colors as you see fit. It's a very kind of interesting way of mixing your values to kind of just give them a little extra something. Also, those kind of work in with the flat noise and the radial noise. That works the same way with the overlay. So right now we have this kind of greenish color. The overlay is lower. It's a gold color. So now if I bump that up, you'll notice it kind of goes right over the top of the highlights, is really where it dominates the area. And that's where I thought that it just kind of needed a little extra something. So, you can play around with this and fiddle around with it to kind of give it that kind of shimmery look. I thought that was a very interesting way of getting that look and feel. And then as most of my lately, the patches have really kind of had the values is that highlights, midtones, and shadows. It's the color values of each. So you have your highlights, which are this green color, the midtones are this purple color right at this moment, and then the shadows, which is usually the background, right, is this gray color right at this moment. So this could be visually interesting because then you could do like, you want like a hot purple and this is green. We could just kind of shift these colors a little bit and get some real interesting visuals. So that's pretty much it. This is a short tutorial. That's the Pixel Disco. questions, comments, complaints, concerns, you can always get a hold of me at jacobmesick.com. Thank you very much for your interest in my wire patch, and you have a great day.